what's going on? This is the Saturday Down South podcast. Subscribe to Saturday Down South on YouTube. I'm Connor O'Gara. Well, we haven't talked in a week, at least not in person like this. It was weird not recording a Sunday pod. You have a story for the people, or so I hear.
Yes, I do. So, okay. I have often joked that I haven't had a day off in like 7-8 months, right? And I'm partially telling the story.
I haven't had a day off in over a year. My Jamaican vacation's going to start right here.
Exactly, right? And so, and partially this is to explain why I sound this way, right? And so, okay, last weekend, Army-Navy, no SEC games. I'm off of my day job, Friday night. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to sleep. I'm going to sleep this weekend. I'm going to just like put my phone on D&D.
Sleep? What's that?
Right. Which is shocking to the people at home watching me because I look like I haven't slept in days. And here's why. So Saturday, I sleep in. I sleep to 11. And about an hour before.
You slept until 11 o'clock, Will?
Yes. And until like an hour before I fully woke up, I, do what you do when you're in a deep slumber. I got up and went to the restroom, right? And I come back to bed and I'm like, okay, cool. So I wake up, go downstairs, make some breakfast. And I'm downstairs in my kitchen. Oh my gosh, what a great day. And I hear running water. And I'm like, that's crazy. There's no running water down here. And I look up. Well, it turns out, Connor, when I went to the restroom in my sleepy, stress-free slumber, my toilet overflowed. And I left it overflowing for like an hour while I went back to sleep with my carefree life. I have no stress. I'm like, oh my gosh, I finally don't have to worry about a text. I don't have to worry about what time kickoff is. You can't hear the fans in my house right now, can you?
No, can't hear.
See, that's
you
why
still
I didn't
have fans going?
Oh, dude, there are 20. I had to call like Roto-Rooter and all these different companies to come redo my house. My downstairs is flooded, dog.
Your first floor, your main floor is flooded.
There is a quarantine barrier right now in my first floor with zippers on it, separating my TV room from my kitchen. And my kitchen is covered in fans. And I can't watch TV down there. They're so loud.
Is it... Oh, not to get too graphic here, and I promise we will get to stuff. We have an entire playoff to preview. Dari Nowkhah is going to join us a bit. We're going to talk some portal. We have obviously playoff conversation with him related to Oklahoma lad of the week. We have a ton that we're going to get to today, but without getting too graphic, this is a smell issue, if I'm not mistaken, on your first floor, correct?
Other than it just being setting water, not really. So that's good. And I left out the most fun part of the story. It's that, the day that I went to the restroom or whatever was on Sunday. On Saturday, I slept with my mouth open and woke up sick. So that's why on Sunday I was so out of it because I was like, oh, I'm going to sleep in again. I'm just going to sleep off this cold or whatever. So that's why I sound like this. Day one of having no stress, I got sick. Day two, I flooded my house and that was my weekend.
So you got like a shop vac or something like that, clean it up. And then you got to call people you got to figure out what's wrong with your toilet because if it can happen once, it can happen again, right?
Oh, that thing's gone. That thing is in the Mike Wazowski biohazard. It's been 2319 blown up. They were like, hey, and it's not to get too deep into it, but I knew that thing was broken. And it wasn't like I, did anything crazy. I literally just took the morning pee that we all do. It just was like, hey, good morning, world.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was just a hilarious, Larry David, almost Christmas movie style thing of what can go wrong next today? But I'm in great spirits. It made me appreciate the beautiful roof over my head. I'm in this situation where when I hear quiet, it's the most quiet I've ever heard in my life. So sitting here talking to you, I feel like I'm in an oasis. So that's great.
An overflowing toilet will humble you real quick. Man. Ooh, that stinks. I mean, in every way. In every possible way, that absolutely stinks. And hopefully your house is not underwater soon. Kiddie pools are fun. Not that kind of kiddie pool.
I was going to say, if it produced usable water, I might be having fun right now. But yeah, I mean, that's the joys of home ownership, folks. And almost everybody I've talked to has been like, oh, I had this happen in my apartment. And I'm like, brother, that's a whole different level of stress. That's why I was excited to share this story with you, because I'm imagining the dial-up sound or the noises of horror that would be happening behind your eyes if you went downstairs and saw your whole downstairs was flooded.
Yeah, and we only have the one floor here, Florida. You don't do second floors, you don't do basements, but they have if we had that after a hurricane, for example, that's the most likely thing. That's the biggest thing that we fear is flooding. it would set off a course of panic in our house that I don't think we've had in the 5 years that we've been homeowners. So fully get where you're coming from. Hope everything is all right and better moving forward. And it's just a little, little story of 2025. Can't tell the story of Will's 2025 without talking about the great toilet flooding of December. What date would that have been? December 14th? Yeah.
So excited to get this year over with, but I'm also really excited for college football. And at the end of the day, guys, that just goes to show that college football is truly our light at the end of the tunnel. No matter what we go through, I just keep thinking I'm counting down to the playoff. All right, these fans will be out of here by Saturday, and I'll be having a good day.
It is. So let's talk about that playoff, Will. We have an SEC on SEC match. We're going to talk about all 4 games here, and I know that JMU Oregon is not SEC related, but I'm like, yeah, well, we're just going to talk 3 first-round playoff games when there's 4. No, we're going to talk about all 4. So let's start with the one that's Friday nights. Number 9, Alabama, 1-point favorite, depending where you look, at number 8, Oklahoma. The over-under I have is 3 Alabama turnovers. There was a greater disparity in turnovers the last time these 2 teams met than there was in the final score, which is weird. But yeah, I mean, makes sense.
Hard to do.
Yeah, really hard to do. I mean, it happens a decent amount, right? But OU winning the turnover battle 3-0 and then winning this game by 2 points, it certainly felt like it was a huge factor in this one. The kicking game, of course, played a big part in that. You might remember Ty Simpson finally couldn't put on his cape, and Bama suffered a loss that really set the wheels in motion for this late season funk that Bama has been in. And meanwhile, Oklahoma won that game, kind of cleared its own path to the playoff, even without R. Mason Thomas in that game, who's set to return for this matchup. Guys coming off injury is going to be a really popular topic of conversation for this one, especially with the Alabama offense, which could return as many as 3 starters on that side of the ball, 3 guys who missed the SEC championship. Parker Brailsford, the center, Josh Cuevas, the tight end, and Jam Miller. I have an unpopular opinion. Maybe you'll agree with this, maybe you won't. I think Cuevas is more important to what Alabama's doing than what Jam Miller is. Agree, disagree?
That's a good one. I mean, like we've kind of talked about it. It's like you either can run the ball or you can't. I don't really think that, like, especially we're not really like in an NFL system where it goes, hey, this is your factor back, this is your franchise guy. And no respect to Jam Miller, but I don't think he kind of is that guy either way. I think he's a useful back, and I think he's a good to great player. But I don't think the running game hinges on him. It's more on the offensive line. Cuevas has been special, man. And it's the kind of guy that doesn't really show up in the stat sheet. It's about trust. I think for a player like Ty Simpson that lives on the edge the way that he does, having that guy versus not having that guy, knowing exactly where your guy is going to be is a complete game changer.
You saw it in the 2 games he had before getting hurt against LSU as well. He was really good. He was kind of becoming that safety valve that Ty Simpson has needed. And yeah, Jeremy Bernard, he can be that at times. He's a safety valve in certain ways, but there's just something about having a tight end in the flat and watching all the times that Ty Simpson would throw to those running backs in the SEC championship, and they just were a total liability being able to catch the football, and seeing how much it upset Kalen DeBoer to have these drop passes and just not be able to trust that guy to make someone miss or just kind of find that soft spot in the zone, whatever it may be. I just think he's been really, really missed. And I think he's important for this one too. And look, like you said, I'm not holding my breath on the Bama run game, even if we find out that Jam Miller has a totally clean bill of health. Is he capable of looking like that guy in spurts? Yes, he's had 2 games in which he's looked really good, and both of those have been games in which he's been hurt. So I don't think that's necessarily something you can set your watch to. I think both of these teams are going to make adjustments from the first matchup. Kalen DeBoer essentially promised that you would see a much improved Alabama offense. Ty Simpson said that as well, when they get healthier on that side of the ball. Can we assume that? Can we assume that this group is going to get better just because it's getting a few of those guys back? On the road against what's probably a top 3 defense in the sport, really doesn't seem like an ideal place to try and troubleshoot and figure things out. But that's the spot that Bama is in, and it's kind of, the point of no return. And there have been questions, I think, about Ty Simpson's health as well, even though he hasn't been on the injury report. That's one of those things where we're not going to find out until after the season. So I'm going to stop holding my breath and assuming that we're going to find any sort of clarity on that as well. We'll find out if he goes through the pre-draft process or if Alabama's season ends. Oh, he was playing through this rib injury or was playing through this shoulder injury. we're not hearing about that now. They're not going to want to expose him. Totally understand. He's taken enough hits to understand why that could be the case. So nobody's surprised there. Will, speaking of quarterbacks who could be at less than 100%, John Mateer.
That's every quarterback now, isn't it? I mean,
True.
There's a whole like angle I could go here where like defensive football is kind of like more important, but I think we're starting to see a little bit of a move to the NFL model where like premium pass rush, because quarterbacks are so valuable and they're playing more and more games, keeping your guy healthy, keeping him protected, I think is such a premium. And like you're looking at it here where it's like, hey, think about the conversations that were happening about Mateer after they beat Michigan, where he's in the Heisman conversation and everything. It's just kind of a different player that we're seeing right now. Still a good player now, not dumping on him. He's also kind of a gamer in that way, but just a fully healthy version of him, I think, would make Oklahoma a different team.
Agreed. The question is, will we get a fully healthy version of him? The cast is going to be off for the first time post-surgery, post-Dr. Shin. And will he look like the guy that we saw against Michigan, or is he still going to be erratic as a passer? We're not going to know until he's actually out there. You can tell me all these practice reports are him doing this. I know there was a video going viral. I can't remember who took it, where he's like backing into the tackling dummy, and you're just like, what's going on here? What's happened to John Mateer? I'm not going to assume anything based off of that. But, this has not been an efficient passing attack all year. OU has only had 2 games all season in which it has hit 8 yards per pass attempt. They were the bookended games, and they only got there against LSU because obviously the 58-yard touchdown to Isaiah Satania, in which a true freshman corner had a lapse in coverage, and that takes the lead late. But those plays could be pivotal in this one. Satania has been really, in my opinion, the only noticeable difference between this year's Oklahoma offense and last year's. I really think that's a fair case that you can make. You can say Mateer's a better player than Jackson Arnold, but I think at least post Mateer surgery, Satania's been the only difference between this OU team and that OU team on the offensive side of the ball. He has 3 more 20-yard scrimmage plays than any SEC player. Isaiah Satania, 19 20-yard scrimmage plays this year. Really good. This season, how many 20-yard pass plays has Bama allowed? 19.
Look at that.
Yeah. Second best in the country. Ohio State's the only unit that's been better at limiting those 20-yard pass plays. I think that's so important in this game because if you watch Oklahoma, they can be 3 and out, stuck in the mud, fans getting restless, and then they hit that chunk play. And it's Satania 87 yards against Mizzou or, 58 yards against LSU. And it's just kind of like, oh, all right, they exhale. They're okay. And Bama hasn't had those big busts in coverage. And OU has done a really good job of being able to capitalize on them when they've been available. And I get that Mateer's his legs are another element that you have to be ready for. I think you should expect, if you're Bama, a lot of the gap design runs. Those have been the most successful times for him when he can call his own number in that way. And when he gets at least 7 of those gap design runs in a game, he's had at least 75 rushing yards all 3 times they've done that, all of which were Oklahoma wins against ranked teams. I don't think that's a coincidence. But the question that I find myself asking, Will, in these home playoff games, wherein we saw last year, it was so heavily tilted towards the home teams. What can neutralize this hostile atmosphere and work in Bama's favor? The Oklahoma offense being ineffective. You saw it in that LSU game. You saw it at a lot of different points during the Mizzou game. And it's not to say that Oklahoma's just going to pick up and where they left off. We just talked about how Mateer, if he's the best version of himself, you're not going to necessarily feel that way. But there's something to be said about those groans from the crowd that are coming, that if 3 and outs are stacking up, and man, they're not even getting plays in Bama territory, and they're not even sniffing the red zone. This doesn't look like an offense that's going anywhere. I think that can add up. I think Bama does a better job of hitting the reset button than Oklahoma does. I know I said I got the ick after the SEC championship, and I wanted to not forget that feeling. I have not forgotten that feeling. And I initially had Oklahoma winning this game by a touchdown. I really did. I've now convinced myself that Bama will be a healthier version of itself on offense. They're going to go back to the drawing board, not necessarily in a way that's going to make this a total 180, but enough to be able to pull this out on the road. Bama's defense makes some big time plays. It's not a 3-0 turnover disparity the way that it was last time. And I am reluctantly picking Bama to win this one 24-20.
Yeah, I mean, it truly is a pick-em game at this point. As funny as it is, because obviously Oklahoma under Venables is undefeated against Alabama, but I don't see a repeat of their first matchup. And you could kind of say turnovers go either way or whatever, but regardless, we know it's going to be an ugly game, right? So let me go back because I didn't want to cut you off.
Over-under's 40.5 for this one, by the way. So it could easily be in the 30s by the time kickoff starts, and I don't think anybody would be surprised.
Yeah, I mean, the more people watch these offenses, the more they're just like taking the line down. They're like, hold on, who's going to get in the end zone? And I think you make a great point about Satania, though. And he's a guy that I feel like should be discussed. We talk about the concept of value, right? The same way we talked about Pavia, okay? You talked about this with Cam Coleman, about the 20-plus yard plays where it's kind of him and Satania at the top of the SEC. And those offenses really depended on those players, i.e. if you could shut this guy down, that's kind of the offense. And it's kind of interesting how we talk so much about John Mateer, but I feel like the X factor might be more so about Satania. Like the Texas game was like not a great John Mateer game. He was pretty clearly injured in that game. Outside of that, 6
turnover-worthy plays in that Texas game.
Yep. Outside of that, it's kind of more so can Satania get going. That's what it was in the LSU game, as you described. He had a big play like that in the Ole Miss game as well that kind of like kept it close. So, yeah, I think that for Bama's – I mean, here's the question. For Bama's defense, for Kane Womack, who I owe you an apology. I was not familiar with your game. If you say, hey, we're going to blanket that guy, Satania, and shut him down, can Oklahoma move the football?
I don't think that they can consistently. And yes, you still have Deion Burks. Koenig's been really good at the tight end spot. It's a unique matchup where you can kind of get him in space, and he's been really effective in some of those key areas as a safety valve for Mateer times. But you just can't really bank on it. They're just not this team that has 10-play, 75-yard drives. They don't have a high enough success rate in the ground game, even if they're getting Blaylock back healthier in the ground game is something that we'll talk about with Dari in a bit here, but I just can't necessarily bank on them doing that consistently. And the question is, well, how much do you have to do that against Bama? Maybe they're not going to be as good against the run without LT Overton. Maybe they're a team that could be on its heels a bit more than we expect, but I just feel like Satania is kind of the straw that stirs the drink for that offense.
Yeah, 100%. And it's interesting because obviously the Oklahoma offense is better than last year, right? But the run game has been worse. I mean, if you look at it kind of per play statistically, last year all they could do on offense was run the football, even when they were trailing. So that can be a little bit deceptive. If you look at kind of the base defenses they were playing against, it was like, okay, go ahead and run the ball. I get that. But as much as we've talked about Mateer being that guy, I think we're exactly hitting the nail on the head, which is that he is the run game at this point, right? Yeah, they've had a back get going here or there, but we've yet to really see like the Jaydn Otts get going. We've yet to really see this ground game come together in a way that makes you feel like they could kind of fall back on it. And then like talking about the turnovers, right? That's why I go back to the last 2 matchups. I feel like we saw, horrible Alabama game against Georgia, right? Like the worst, like just horrible. Ty Simpson was still not really like creating turnovers in the way that he did against Oklahoma in that environment last time. And what's so interesting, I feel like Mateer has a little bit more of that in him, right? Like I'm not trying to make this into the like anti-Mateer.
I get what you're saying. Yeah. I think that's fair.
Like I'm not trying to make this into the anti-Mateer thing, but if you look at, why you hit it on at the top, right? The turnover differential was different than the score was greater than the score differential. Well, Ty Simpson had uncharacteristic turnovers against a great Venables defense. And maybe they'll do the same thing that Georgia did and shut them down and do all that. But still, Georgia was not able to like turn him over. They were able to create a little bit of havoc.
Didn't need to.
Right, exactly. It was more of the kind of the Georgia stuff that we talked about where on a per play basis, they're just like smoking you off the ball. And it's like, okay, like no one's open. Like, versus we're taking risks. The thing that scared me so much, or the thing that scares me so much about the Oklahoma offense and Mateer specifically is in these last couple of games where he struggled, and obviously the LSU game is the freshest on our minds, he's just throwing the ball to LSU players. Like, it's like, okay, I don't even really know where you're going with that. Like, if you were prime Aaron Rodgers, I'm not sure there was a guy open there that could have gotten the ball there. So it comes down to, like we talked about the first time, havoc. All right. So I'm before I like kind of reveal my pick here, I got one more question for you. The obvious answer is, after making the Georgia defensive line look like the 85 Bears, like I don't know how Georgia does this in every big game. They just become the Monstars. But how do you feel about the Alabama offensive line versus this Oklahoma front that just like ate them alive last time?
With our Mason Thomas playing, because Taylor Wine was, man, he was remarkable in this first matchup, and he teed off. And it was this reminder of, man, I don't want to say that the pieces are um, like interchangeable, because that takes away from how good some of these players on Oklahoma's defense have been. But when you take your best defensive player off of that unit and it can still do the things that it did to Ty Simpson, I think so much of that is scheme. And how much will they be able to still shake things up and send pressure in a way that confuses Ty Simpson, in a way that forces Bama into these mass protections, that forces them to put their running backs in spots that they don't want to be in, and picking up, a guy from the second level? Like, what does all of that look like? Because you're right, that could be the deciding factor in these games. Is Ty Simpson able to do the thing that he did against Auburn, which is backpedal, 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 find a guy, find Isaiah Horton in the back of the end zone? Is he able to capitalize in those spots, or are those plays turning into ball up for grabs, Peyton Bowen, boom, taking it the other way? That's what this comes down to. That's what this game hinges on in so many different ways. And I think Ty Simpson is like, if he is less than 100%, then a lot of the things that we've talked about with Mateer off of this injury apply to him as well. There are certain guys, we praised DJ Lagway for this down the stretch last year, who, if you take away one thing that they have, and if they're limited in some sort of way, they can find a way to overcome that. And they don't necessarily need all of the parts working to be an effective quarterback. John Mateer is clearly not that guy. He needs everything at his disposal to be an effective quarterback, or else turn that guy into a game manager and hope he doesn't turn the ball over. Ty Simpson, at this point, you have to wonder, are there things that are taken away from his game wherein he can't necessarily stretch the field in the way that you hoped he'd be able to? And he is a much lesser version of himself at this point. And can OU expose that and make that an obvious thing? We won't know until we actually see that, but I think there are a lot of people wondering that on the Alabama side.
And I would say too, I mean, ultimately, like hate to be this guy, but it's like these are college kids. Like there's only but so much you should have to take away from a college quarterback. Like the way that Ty Simpson has kind of responded to all these injuries, to having a bad offensive line, I wouldn't exactly say that he's limited in that he needs things to go well for him. I just think he needs for everything to not go terribly for him. And things have gone terribly. That's the thing. Is like if you're Alabama and you can't block or run the football, it's gonna be. But I can only blame your quarterback, but so much when he's like making these like ridiculous heroic plays off of his back foot, and guys are like dropping the ball. So yeah, and I love the point that you make about Cuevas, and he's a guy that like I feel like we forget about as the third Washington guy that DeBoer brought over. We talk about Brailsford, we talk about Jeremy Bernard, but it just because he wasn't as involved last year, I feel like they were kind of part of that news cycle of like he's bringing his guys in the building. But yeah, I mean, not having the safety blanket, having Ryan Williams have kind of these weird plays where it's like he's a factor. He's either creating a turnover or he's creating a big play, right? And Jeremy's kind of been the only like consistent guy I feel like you're like wire to wire on the offense outside of Simpson. So yeah, it's a lot to say. As much as it like kind of pains my heart, I gotta pick Bama here, but I think that the clear like the blueprint's so out there, man. And for Oklahoma to go 3-0 against Alabama would be so demoralizing to Alabama. It would have them like asking real questions because Oklahoma is not a team that's been, Georgia or even honestly like Texas since they got in the league. It's like, what does this guy know? How is he your kryptonite like this? And how can a great defensive team just completely kind of like short circuit you like this? Because I'll say it this way too. I think Alabama's offensive scheme is solid and sound. I think the players haven't exactly lived up to it. I think with Oklahoma, the scheme is a little bit lacking, and Mateer has been asked to do more outside of the Satanias, right? So it's like on paper, these teams look very similar, but I think in reality, they're very different as to how they got to those numbers and those results.
One more thing, and this is something that we can discuss on Sunday with the recap pod, which again, we'll get back to a Sunday pod because of the playoff schedule with them starting on Friday and continuing into Saturday. if Alabama loses this game, the Kalen DeBoer to Michigan talk is going to surface. I'm going to need to see some actual, real, non-Jimmy Sexton things to make me think that that's a real possibility instead of just speculation from a few people and throwing out the idea of, is he actually happy at Alabama? Does Alabama want him to stay? I need more tangible proof to think that could happen. So we'll play the results on that, and the speculation will ramp up if Bama loses this game. Kalen DeBoer has said throughout this week, like, I'm going to be at Alabama next year. He's trying to do everything. Jimmy Sexton's working those phones. Okay, make no mistake about it. He is. And they're trying to get what they're trying to get with him right now is somebody that's had two years at each of his first two FBS head coaching jobs. They're trying to get, where does Alabama stand with him? Where does the public stand with Kalen DeBoer? These are all feelers, in my opinion, and I'd still be stunned to actually see him leave after he signed up to be Nick Saban's successor.
You know, I mean, this could all change, right? We saw this happen with Lane Kiffin, but I wish DeBoer were easier to hate. Like, he really did kind of go out there and say, I'm happy here. Like, he really did kind of say, like, yeah, I'll be back next year. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it would take, I think, a little bit more emotion for him to go back on his word than some of the other coaches that have left that we've seen. So I'm with you. It feels like a little bit of leveraging, but I feel like DeBoer is like, I hate to say he's honest because nobody's honest anymore, right? But it's like you feel like Jimmy Sexton's giving him the same playbook that he's given everybody else, and he's just saying a little bit more than he's supposed to as far as like tipping his hand that I think he is happy at Alabama. And I personally don't think Michigan's that great of a job because at the end of the day, you have some opportunities in conference to make some hay, but you're always going to be measured against Ohio State, and you're coming out of an absolute dumpster fire with like the Harbaugh coaching tree and more and like all that stuff.
It's a mess.
It's like a terrible mess, and I don't like. Look, winning the Iron Bowl is like a big deal, but I think Alabama has like pretty consistently done that. Yeah, okay, like losing to Oklahoma sucks, whatever. But the pressure of beating Ohio State is from day one, and it doesn't matter what the regime before you did. So I don't think that Michigan's an easier job than Alabama at this point, starting from -10, you know?
Like, I keep talking about that job this week of, hey, who could make sense for that job? And the name I keep giving is Brian Kelly. They would ideally love to get Kenny Dillingham, but Brian Kelly is the one that actually makes the most sense considering the desperation that could be there for both parties. But I keep coming back to, I don't think Ward Manuel's making this hire. And if you don't know who your boss is going to be, and if you don't know what potential violations can come of this entire Sharon Moore situation, then who in the world is signing up for that job who's at an established power conference job at this point? I just keep questioning that. So again, I'm going to need to see more actual proof, but you know what's going to happen if Bama loses this game. All eyes then shift to that subject. So we'll again probably have more to discuss on that on Sunday.
They're going to have to offer Brian Kelly a wing of that university, dude, because actually he has all the leverage. He has this massive buyout. So, like, I actually think he might not coach again, honestly, or wait a couple of years, because why would he? No premier program wants him outside of maybe Michigan. And there were those rumors a couple of years ago, which I think were kind of unfounded. But that being said, yeah, if they do end up with Brian Kelly, he's going to end up fleecing them harder than he did LSU. He's going to have all kinds of executive control, because why would anybody go into that situation, especially with a buyout, to go hang out with your son Kinzel all day?
$54 million. A lot of money not to work. A lot of money. All right. Number 10, Miami. Number 7, Texas A&M. A&M 3.5-point favorites. The over-under I have is 200 Miami rushing yards. A&M, you've heard me say this probably a few times, has allowed 200 rushing yards 4 times this year, 3 times in the latter half of the season. The 3 teams in the latter half of the season who failed to do that against the Aggies include LSU, South Carolina, Samford. Yeah, those are 3 teams that are all outside the top 115 in FBS run game. Samford is an FCS team, I understand that. So if you've been a top 115 rushing offense in FBS, you've hit 200 yards against A&M in the latter half of the season. That was clunky. You get what I'm saying. I basically just wanted to include Texas in that because Texas is the 101st rushing offense in America, and yet it still hit 200 rushing yards against A&M, including their first 100-yard rusher all year. Trey Wisner went for 155, 8 yards a pop. That's troubling. Not great. Not great for A&M going into the playoff. It's the biggest thing that Mike Elko needed to address with his team in this game planning process, which will include both of his coordinators moving on to other jobs. Though, as Billy Lucci says, Elko has been calling defensive plays all year, not Jay Bateman, who is taking the Kentucky DC job. So make of it what you will. I bring that up, the ground game specifically, because what have we said all year about Miami? They can lean on teams. You watch them. What do they want to do down the stretch to close out these games? They don't want to have Carson Beck making big-time decisions. They want to lean on you. They want to wear you down, and that's an elite offensive line that's capable of doing so. Mark Fletcher Jr., who was banged up in the middle of the season, how effective is he going to be? Maybe he's going to be as healthy as he can possibly be in this game. We will see. A&M, you look at the raw number and go, well, they've got the best third down defense in America. This is fine for A&M, but third and short, they've been really, really vulnerable. I think they showed it in that Texas game. It was like when it's 3rd and 1 to 3 yards, A&M is like bottom 10 in the country defending that. But when it's longer than that, it's 3rd and 4 and longer, they're the best in the country, and it's not even close. When you give a chance to be able to pin their ears back and rush the passer, obviously that's where they excel. Miami's 5th in America in time of possession for a reason. They can get Pringle involved in the ground game. They've been doing a little bit more with Malachi Toney in the ground game since they've had that injury to Fletcher. I mean, you'll see him get backfield carries, a little wildcat. I don't know if they call it wild cane, whatever, little jet sweep. They'll do a lot of different things with Malachi Toney because he is that dude and he's special. There's a lot that Miami can do offensively that can make this a really frustrating day at the office for A&M. There's also a lot that A&M can do with that pass rush to all of a sudden make Carson Beck go, hey, rough day at the office for me too. His pressure rate on dropbacks, Will, is 14.7%. That's like far and away the best in FBS among quarterbacks that have had at least 50 pressure dropbacks on the season. That's basically every starting quarterback. That's nothing. The next closest, I believe, is Trinidad Chambliss with 20.5% pressure rate on dropbacks. So Carson Beck, he's having some of these games where, just like at Georgia, he's not getting touched. Cassius Howell likes to touch quarterbacks. That came out a little weird. Cassius Howell likes to punish quarterbacks. That's somehow worse. The big question, is, can A&M get to a quarterback who has only taken multiple sacks twice this season? Carson Beck has been sacked 8 times all year. I would tend to think that means sending extra pressure. Carson Beck has only taken 3 sacks in non-blitzing situations all year. That's it. That's nothing, man. Only 5 when he's been blitzed, so that's really not a huge disparity. But it's wild to think that this is someone who has played in 12 regular season games, and he has only 20 completions under pressure. That's a hat tip to that Miami offensive line. That is really, really tough. Just for a little comparison here, Jackson Arnold had as many completions under pressure this year as Carson Beck. Yeah. just sit on that one for a second here. Wait a minute. That's the guy who tucks it and runs every time he's under pressure, or he gets sacked, or he got benched midseason. Yeah. Jackson Arnold has as many completions under pressure as Carson Beck. Okay. Very different players, very different situations. It's pretty obvious analysis and not really groundbreaking stuff to say that A&M's ability to get Miami off schedule is everything in this one. Because if Marcel Reed is out of rhythm, I'm not saying he's a rhythm quarterback, A&M fans, but if he's out of rhythm, that hurts the flow of the offense, even if they're able to get Le'Veon Moss back. I hesitate to assume that any workload with Le'Veon Moss is imminent. He's had 2 significant leg injuries in the last 14 months. I think they want to do right by him. I also think they have a playoff game to win. I would expect plenty of Reuben Owens in this one. I think they'd like to get E.J. Smith more involved. He's been really, really good running down the stretch here. I think he needs more run. I'm not saying he's his dad, but he needs to be part of this A&M rushing attack. Ideally, I think A&M's best way to neutralize Ruben Bain in that Miami pass rush would be to run the ball consistently, get some of those quick hitting passes to the edges with Concepcion, with Craver. That's easier said than done against a very, very good Miami run defense. Canes are most vulnerable on the back end. If you can get that time to throw and get to their secondary, that's when they've been in trouble. Easier said than done. I don't know that they'll be able to do that, at least not consistently. I could definitely see a world in which A&M regroups, maybe plays its best game since that Notre Dame game. Ironically enough, two best games the best game that each of these teams have played against Notre Dame. I'm sure Notre Dame fans will mention that when they're at home bitterly watching the playoff and not.
I mean, that's a Pop-Tart Bowl team though. So I mean, does it really?
Well,
it's not really a quality win. I mean, it's like a playoff team or anything.
Pop-Tart Bowl is not for teams like Notre Dame.
Actually, they're not a Pop. That's a good point. They are not a Pop-Tart Bowl team. They declined.
Yeah, they are way too serious for that stuff. Brown sugar cinnamon Pop-Tart. Come on, what are we doing here? I could see A&M having this game of, wow, this is what we've been building towards. This is the reset that we needed. We look better coming off of that Texas loss. We're able to turn into the best version of ourselves, the version that got us to 11-0, that allowed us to win games in which we didn't have our fastball. It wouldn't surprise me if they won by 2 touchdowns. Let's not forget, Will, there's history working against Miami. No ACC team has won a BCS or New Year's Six Bowl in the 2020s. That's right. Miami's trying to become the first. Let's also not forget Mario Cristobal, late game situation, close game. Don't feel great about that. Don't feel great about that if you're a Miami fan. But the second I saw this matchup for A&M, I said, man, I really, really don't like that for the Aggies. I don't. I worry about A&M not being able to get off the field on 3rd and short. I think we see one of those third quarters in which A&M gets one possession and Miami just takes the air out of the football, takes 108,000 people at Kyle Field out of that game. I think Miami looks like the team that's playing with house money after surprisingly getting into the field. So, yeah, I'm going with Miami to win this one, 31-24.
We're both going to pick Miami here, huh?
Wow. I thought we would be disagreeing on the first 2 games, and we're agreeing on them.
Yeah, I'm imagining the Aggie fans watching us on YouTube, just what they're going to say about us. But just hear me out here, guys.
Tell me what I said was wrong about anything A&M related, Aggie fans. You get what I'm saying.
Here's the thing, man. This should be talked about as one of the great, trenches matchups that we've seen in recent history, right? Like, A&M's offensive line, dogs. A&M's front 7, adding in guys like Torian York, dogs. Miami, their whole line could get drafted like dogs. Everything that you would say is an advantage for A&M against every team in America except maybe Ohio State, maybe Indiana.
Maybe Texas Tech.
Yeah, but exactly. Whenever things have gotten hard for A&M, and you talked about the rushing stats haven't been great for them lately, but they've been able to lean on teams. In the second half of these games, they've been able to, we can't really figure it out, but we're just going to punch you in the mouth. The only thing stopping Miami from basically being a great team is themselves. It's Carson Beck. When you watch their losses, it's like, brother, did you know you were at a football game today? It's really not. And you could look back at the picks that Louisville made and some of the most interesting, unique individual interceptions I've ever seen. Credit to them. They made some plays. Beck also made some turnovers that were just
terrible.
Did he body swap with me? This guy looks like he just never seen a defense. So it truly is, does Miami beat themselves, right? Because usually the things that I would like about A&M, as soon as I saw this matchup, I was like, oh my God, I'm so excited for this. That's why, I talked about the playoff selection committee and kind of just being petty, how they had some rematches, but they also have a game like this where you go, these teams are kind of foils of each other. It's both of them kind of likely should have been in their conference championship games. Both of them dropped the ball late. They have the thing that would make you feel good about a team in the playoff, but they have this recent history of just kind of dropping the ball when it counts. And I know Mike Elko hasn't exactly been that way, but that was the Texas game a little bit, and so A&M, we talked about it, has already kind of crossed the hump of a team that should be taken seriously. And again, Miami always does the funniest thing, but I do truly believe the funniest thing here would be them beating Texas A&M. I think that all they have to do to be successful in this game is to not just commit absolute, throw the ball to Torian York, because it is about getting downhill, getting into those 3rd and short situations. And that ultimately comes down to play calling and physicality, because their offensive line's awesome. So if they just don't abandon the run and kind of do the reverse and lean on A&M, we've seen, we talked about, it seems like their conditioning is a little bit lacking. It seems like, only LSU is unable to run the ball. And hey, good luck. I mean, congrats. So that being said, like I really do like Miami in this matchup. I think that if they could just limit the mistakes and play their brand of football outside of those weird losses, like I like that. I like it a lot. And again, like Marcel Reed, I think is going to be asked to carry like a very heavy burden in this game. And I think we're going to learn a ton about him. And I think that this should put to bed to rest the doubts of Marcel Reed if he balls out in this one. This is not like yesterday's Miami's front seven. This is like a real, like I said, this is like you're playing Alabama or Ohio State. Like they are a real NFL level offensive defensive line front seven. So like if Marcel Reed is in a situation like he was against South Carolina where he's getting the drops, the run game's not working for him, and he has to go beat Miami, oh my goodness, that would be a performance for lifetimes. I think that's exactly, if you're an A&M fan, you're sitting here, you're already, writing the negative comment. That's the dream for you, is to go, okay, Miami was able to punch us in the mouth and Marcel Reed stepped up and beat us, because I don't think they're going to be able to win this game on the ground.
I think there's going to be if you're watching this game as a Miami fan or an A&M fan, and you see your quarterback drop back and hit that back foot and throw on schedule, there's going to be a feeling of, oh crap. What does it look like when Malachi Tony gets in space? What does it look like when Casey Concepcion gets in space? Do you trust your guy to be able to tackle at the next level? Do you trust them to be able to cover? Because getting rid of the football is going to be so important, especially for Marcel Reed, and being able to get those quick hitting routes, and guys, having those two guys in Concepcion and Kraber that are so good at after the catch, and what they can do to make Miami feel like, man, we're on our heels the entire game. Our pass rush isn't getting home at a high enough rate. And all of a sudden, this is looking like the balanced A&M attack that really, was worthy of being in the national championship discussion. And no longer is A&M in that discussion. That's the interesting thing. That Texas game changed so many of those conversations. How healthy is Marcel Reed going to look in this game? If he gets through that game with a clean bill of health and it's a 45-42 shootout, we're probably having different conversations. But it was almost like confirmation bias set in with A&M. And I guess by picking against A&M, some are going to say that I'm guilty of feeding into that too much, and that the Aggies will successfully hit the reset button. But I just think that Miami is a brutal matchup. And as long as this isn't one of those Carson Beck games, because you look at the turnover-worthy plays, he's cut them in half. The problem is that when he makes those plays, they're still so bad. I mean, they're still terrible. He wasn't making these plays in 23. He really wasn't. And there's still moments, and there could be one or two of them in this game in which you go, oh yeah, that's the guy that I saw 2024 Georgia. That's familiar. This is the guy that midseason was just a walking interception. Might as well have just gone up to the other team and just handed them the football. If A&M's putting him in those spots, then okay, different story. And it doesn't matter where he's playing. Like, he did that at home against Louisville too. He did it in front
That's
of
the best part about Miami.
people.
They have no home stadium. Playing on the road is nothing to them. They don't depend on home field advantage because they have no home field advantage, and they lost to Louisville at home. So it's like, hey, we'll play on the road. At least our fans aren't booing us here.
It's like the Dodgers, a little bit.
Oh, real quick, I want to just, so as far as A&M being like a contender, I agree with you, but I think for a slightly different reason, which is that their draw is horrible here. I mean, like Miami, we think is a pretty good.
The 6th seed. A&M, you should have gotten the 6th seed. I've been saying that since Selection Sunday. You should have gotten the 6th seed, and your draw is A&M went from playing potentially Tulane to playing Miami. Different story.
Yeah, and I mean, like that, we ask questions, okay, would Ole Miss be penalized, whatever. But I think if you're an A&M fan, the more I look at this, you kind of do have a reason to be upset at this seeding, because it'd take 2019 LSU levels of locking in to beat Miami, Ohio State, and then likely Georgia, the winner of Georgia Ole Miss. Then by the way, you still have more to go. You know what I'm saying? And so like I don't know, like that's just an insane road. So that's where I'm coming from, is that, yeah, that game kind of changed my opinion of them. It was almost like all their flaws on display. But if they had, like, I don't know, Oklahoma's path, or if they had like a different path, like to Texas Tech or something, I'd be like, oh yeah, this team's still alive. But I'll say this, and I want to say this before the game happens, and we'll get out of here. If they beat Miami, like, what is a win for this season for Texas A&M? If they lose this game, is this season like a failure to them?
No, it's not a failure. This is something we've talked about before. expectations changed after the Notre Dame game. They obviously did. And in getting to this point, if you told anybody coming into the season, year 2, Mike Elko, you're going to start 11-0, and even if you lose your last 2 games, you don't end up winning a playoff game, hosting a playoff game at Kyle Field is still a win. And it's not to say that, you should just be happy to be there. That's not the case. You have a very talented roster. You would like to be able to take advantage of having what someone who's considered one of the better play callers in the sport, and Colin Klein, who's obviously off to a new job. You want to capitalize on this window because you don't know what's going to be guaranteed. You've had a lot of injury luck in your favor, not everything, but you've been very fortunate that way. A veteran offensive line, you want to take advantage of what you have with this team. So it's not to say that A&M just merely showing up on Saturday and playing in front of the home crowd is like an automatic win. But yeah, I mean, anybody would have signed up for this. Tons of programs across college football. Like, what would USC fans do right now to have a home playoff game? Like, what would LSU do right now to have a home playoff game? Well, imagine if you were preparing for Saturday knowing that you got a home playoff game at Death Valley. Like, you would be ecstatic to be at this place. So we shouldn't necessarily take that for granted, even if this season doesn't follow the arc that Aggie fans hope for.
See, this is interesting because so remember, I disagreed with you all year about this with A&M, where I said they were like, last year was a win. Book it. You got over it. Like, you need to get your guys in the building. I think to consider this season a success after what this season has been, I think they got to beat Miami, because Miami would have been seen in my mind for most of the year as a pretty inferior team to Texas A&M, and you're at home. I think that if you win a game at Kyle Field, it just opens up so many things versus the visual imagery of losing to Miami at home, where I think you can truly say, hey, all the jokes are over. Like I said, like, Marcel Reed will win you this game. If you beat Miami running the ball, maybe that would be the funniest outcome. Actually, with a hurt running back, you just run for 200. I don't know. But I think this is very like program shifting in the same way that the Texas loss kind of shifted back a little bit. I think beating Miami puts you right there where, hey, you lose to Ohio State, you lose to Ohio State. So it happens to the best of us, But Miami is the one where you go, okay, this team, has money, has built their team in a certain way. We've done the same thing when we're eons ahead of them, even kind of at our floor. And I think that's what you're selling this as for Elko, is this is your one, that we got our guys in the building. Yeah, Klein's gone, but in his mind, we'll find somebody else. Not that that's super easy to do, but I think you make a good point about Klein. It's like, we don't know what the future is. So yeah, I think that a win against Miami is a really big deal. And I think if they could just get this one, they're going to be set.
Fair. Very fair. All right. Number 11, Tulane. Number 6, Ole Miss, 17.5-point favorites. The over-under I have is 12. Count them, 12 mentions of one Lane Kiffin. That's coming. I would love, more than anything else, Connor, what are you rooting for in the first round of college football playoff? I'm rooting for any sort of way in which ESPN execs can put their heads together. There's this game on TNT? Whatever. A network can put their heads together at the last minute and get a Lane Kiffin simulcast watching this game. My God, Will. My God.
Turn the notifications on, folks. And I'm sorry, hold on really quick. There has never been a better case for the basketballification of football than the True TV playoff game. This is on TNT. TNT. But it's both. It's the Turner thing. It's TNT, True TV. This is like a March Madness game. We got the tournament here.
I love it. I have no problem with the other networks getting involved in the college football playoff. I don't really think, like, with all due respect to ESPN, I don't think that their product is obsolete. I would love to see playoff games on CBS, but they've apparently put themselves out of those sweepstakes. So yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with seeing that. Like last year wasn't it the Penn State SMU game? SMU Penn State was the TNT game early, and I remember thinking, oh, they actually did a perfectly fine job.
Dude, the Big 12 folks love TNT. Anyway.
Yeah, as they should. So anyway, put it on TBS, simulcast on TBS, something like that with Lane. It would be the most watched, most viewed, most streamed, whatever simulcast in the history of simulcasts. Okay, Lane's going to be locked into this one. He's going to be watching every second. He's got every reason to root for Ole Miss publicly because, yeah, it's his team. It's also his wallet. He gets $250,000 if Ole Miss wins this game. Can you imagine that? Oh, I'm not going to lose anything, but I'm going to get $250K if the team that I coached all year wins this game. I mean, it's not necessarily the like sweating out a bet, but I mean, Lane's got obvious stakes with this one. And I do think that it would be just incredible television. I would. So why can't we figure out a way to get Lane on board to do this? Get the financial incentive to him. He gets in 3 hours or whatever of national programming ahead of the transfer portal window opening. Lane would sign up for something like that, right? Who says no?
It's like an Icarus flying too close to the sun thing, where that's close to doing 3 hours of radio, where you have about, like Russillo's talked about this, or that's one thing that Cowherd, like I'll give him credit for, like being on air kind of by yourself for that long is so hard. So I think once you get past about an hour, Lane's going to start making some jokes that are going to like really
put other people in there. Bring in guests, bring in former players, bring in Juice for all I care. Whoever, just.
Yeah,
you can do this.
I think he's going to be the subtweet king. Like I said, notification is on for this one. And I think, myself as well as Lane Kiffin, I'm excited to root for LSU's coaching staff in this one. I'm fully just going to make my Twitter into a half Ole Miss account, because why wouldn't we at this point? I think that, I'm excited to see what it's like to run the ball. That would be really nice. I'm so fired up for this game. I feel like it's our first look at Pete Golding as a head coach. What?
Did you send Frank Wilson a care package when he got hired by Pete Golding's staff to go to Ole Miss?
Dude, just imagine me last night. I have like blasting fans, and I'm looking up LSU's rushing stats every year from 2004 and showing Andrea like it's a conspiracy. We're in the top 5 or 10 every year. Look at last year. Our leading running back had 3 touchdowns. What is going on? And so like I'm actually I'm happy for Frank, and I don't know what's going to happen with it with the bowl game, which is funny because we've been told that you can't let a guy coach the bowl game in that situation or whatever. Cool, but
that's not it. That's not it.
I don't even know what the rules are anymore, man. We're making them up as we're going along. This is a fun time. So yeah, I mean I'm so locked in to see how this Ole Miss team. Like I said, I want to see Pete Golding as a head coach. I want to see what this Ole Miss staff does against a Tulane team that they already beat this year, but that seems a lot more on one page with John Summerall, who has made his exit very clean. And it's almost like continuity is like what John Summerall has going for him versus chaos, but a lot more talent kind of on the field and in the booth for Ole Miss. So like, this is an all-time like telenovela style matchup, dude. I'm so locked in.
I'm looking forward to seeing that atmosphere. Ole Miss, you can tell yourself this is a Lane Kiffin revenge game. Those players, those fans, whoever, you can tell yourself that's going to be the elephant in the room. Your first step to winning the breakup is by blowing out Tulane. That's very clear and obvious. If you do that, you get to tell yourself, see, we didn't need Lane. We were just fine without him. And even though it was, Lane who had a massive say in recruiting that roster, developing that roster, having the offensive staff, which, by the way, you're getting 4 of those assistants back in addition to Charlie Wise Jr., who'll be calling plays, just in case we forgot. I know that this game was 45-10 in the first meeting, Will. I don't think that Lane would lead them to a 45-10 game if he were on that sideline on Saturday. That he gets to say that if you're in Lane's camp, you get to say that would happen because you already saw it happen in September. But I would still not say that would be imminent, because John Summerall makes conference title games every single year because his teams always play their best down the stretch. They always find a way to win these meaningful conference games, and they'll play these non-conference games against power conference foes, which they had, 3 of them this year, Duke, Northwestern, Ole Miss, obviously, and they figure out where they need to improve, where they need to get better. And they've gotten better defensively. That's a hallmark of John Summerall's teams. And Jake Retzlaff, the former BYU transfer, it's Retzlaff, not Retzlaff, which I told myself when he was being called BYU, whatever. But that's
a throwback. I missed that one anyway.
Yeah, he's gotten better. We always say be patient if you're going to start a post-spring transfer, even if it's a post-spring transfer who starts under very atypical circumstances, we can call them. He has gotten better. I would tend to think he's going to be better than the 5 for 17 passer that he was in the first matchup between these two teams. Plus, there's also a bit more of a book on Trinidad Chambliss than there was early in the season. This was his second career start at Ole Miss. He had more than 400. He had more than 400 total yards in this game. He had more than 100 on the ground. Tulane actually did a really good job of containing Lacey in this one, but Chambliss was really, really good from the start. And it was kind of one of the reasons why he was able to fend off Austin Simmons and not allow him to get his job back. And, this just feels like Kiffin or no Kiffin, this was always going to be closer the second time around. How much closer is the question? Is it enough to make us think that Tulane flipped or is capable of flipping a 35-point result? I'm not going to go that far. If that's the case, buddy, we got some questions to ask. We got some real questions to ask internally. And Kiffin is sitting there smiling ear to ear, even if it means he's not collecting $250K. Wouldn't surprise me if Ole Miss came out of the gates on fire, playing off emotion, brilliant opening script. Everybody's going, look at what Charlie West Jr. is doing. Man, amazing that he's able to coach in this game and be able to, move past those emotions and this awkward exit and all that stuff. And it's looking like it's about to get lopsided again, but Tulane just kind of hangs around. It's a game that is both never in doubt, but never truly out of reach until the final minutes of the fourth quarter. I think Lacey does the heavy lifting late once again. Ole Miss wins 28-17. Lane collects $250K.
You know what's such a funny element of this? I'm not kidding. John Summerall is better in big games, and I would argue that Lane Kiffin's been worse. And so this is kind of an underrated storyline here as far as Lane Kiffin coaching, not coaching, whatever. There was for sure a reality where he lost this game. And especially with all the stuff going on, if he was like 1 foot out the door or whatever, and that would have been rough. And so, the more that we're kind of getting towards this, the more I'm thinking I really do think this Tulane team is like shaping up into form. And I am like, we talk about there's what I think is going to happen. There's what I'm rooting for. I think here it lines up almost perfectly because the thought of a John Summerall off of a playoff win news cycle would be so terrifying for the rest of the SEC. I am so much more scared of John Summerall, respectfully, because of what no one's been able to stop him yet. And if he's able to beat an SEC team in the playoff at Tulane, the amount
of 5 team has won a playoff game, Will.
Yeah, the amount of momentum they're going to have headed into Gainesville is going to be a train, for lack of a better word. And I just kind of watch out if that happens because they're going to start off hot. I love the coordinator hires. Like, I want everybody to record this part of it if I'm ever critical of John Summerall because I've said nothing but positive things since he's gotten hired there. I respect him a ton. That being said, I think Ole Miss should still blow them out. I think based on, again, talent on the coaching staff, talent on the field, I think that, Pete has like intense interim energy here. Reminds me a little bit of like the Coach O after Les Miles thing, where it's like, oh, the guys are really here for him. They're going to hit harder. They're going to run faster. And I think that gets you to a place. I think it gets you past Tulane. I don't know if it gets you past Georgia, but I think that the amount of kind of like laissez-faire, like the whole offensive staff is going to be like, look, let's win one for the boys. Let's take some risks. Let's play free out here. What are they going to do? Fire us, right? Like, and I think that's the scariest thing to be as any team. But for an SEC team in this matchup, you don't want to turtle and be scared. And I think that Ole Miss has no reason to be that. I think they are going to your point, I think they'll punch them in the mouth early. But I think that it's going to be, I would say, a great defensive game from Ole Miss just based on, again, the amount of juice on that side of the ball. And I think they're going to wire-to-wire dominate this one, not to the 45-10 standard that they had earlier in the year, but I think that Tulane's a way better team. And so that being said, I think just because of the circumstances here, like I said, ton of respect for John Summerall, ton of respect for what Tulane has done. But I think that Ole Miss has that. I feel like almost whoever they would play in week one would be at a disadvantage because you really don't know what you're going to see. And I think once they're able to kind of put some of that stuff on tape, it's hard to build a game plan with a patchwork staff over the course of a couple of games. But yeah, I think Ole Miss is going to dominate this one, and excited to see it, man.
I think if you're Tulane, you have to hope you can put Chambliss in some of those turnover-prone spots. Just get him out of his game, because we saw in the Mississippi State game, he gets his jersey stolen, and I thought he came out of the gates a little bit too hot, and he had a little bit too much mustard on some of those throws early, and Mississippi State wasn't necessarily able to take advantage of that. And I think he's gonna be pretty fired up for this one, even though if you've watched him throughout this whole process, you see him speak when he's asked about hey, if you're able to get that waiver and get another year of eligibility, you're going to be coming back to Ole Miss. I can't remember who was in the Ole Miss media. It might have been our guy Michael Katz who asked that question, but nonetheless, he answered it. almost like a politician would, and just letting you know anything is on the table for him. I do think this means a lot to him. And I do think that if you have any path, if you're Tulane, you need that first quarter turnover. All of a sudden, you're putting him in that spot where he's questioning himself. He feels like this guy that's been playing on borrowed time already. And if all of a sudden you can make him think about the ramifications of, his play and stuff like that, and it just a sort of a different way and kind of get in his head, then obviously that would bode really, really well. But easier said than done. I don't think they'll be able to do that. Imagine, though, if that happened and if this result flipped, the amount of panic that would be set in Oxford. Again, I don't think they're going to have to worry about that, but those conversations would shift in a hurry.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm not even going to speak on Oxford because people go call me a hater. I'm going to talk about Gainesville, where as a fan of a rival team, I don't want that coming to Gainesville. Like, that is, if they have that level of momentum, and I think, again, this is going to be, I think, an awesome game. I think just like based on everything that's at stake. And so, yeah, I think we're going to get like some of the most interesting tidbits. I think the game day crew is going to do like, or not like college game day, but like the play-by-play crew is going to do a great job of like finding little tidbits about the coaching staffs and like their prep and stuff like this, where it's just such a unique situation. I think while this stuff is fresh and new, before we get into the late stage part of this, where like, whatever we're going in the future, this is a moment in time where we can look back on and say like, wow, there are so many things involved. You talk about the Ole Miss players and where their future is. Maybe that's a distraction, and the coaches are fine. Because the coaches' futures are set. Everybody in that building is in that building in Oxford. Everybody in New Orleans knows more or less where they're going next at this point. They at least have handshake agreements. So it's really the players that are still up in the air because the window hasn't officially opened. Nobody campers, so they don't know where they're going, right? And so that being said, yeah, I think that this game, I don't think it's going to be like a be-all, end-all. I don't think it's going to like absolve people or it's going to prove a lot of things. I think it's just going to be a sliding doors moment that we're going to look back on for years.
Great narrative game, though. Great narrative game. Can't wait for it. All right, another narrative game. Number 12, James Madison against number 5, Oregon. Oregon's a 21.5-point favorite. The over-under I have is 1.5 trolling tweets from Notre Dame. Some salty, like, hey, we should have been here. How dare James Madison benefit from these rules and this corrupt system that somehow didn't reward us, even though we lost our 2 games to the most difficult teams on our schedule. They're going to blame, Notre Dame will find a way to blame JMU, even though it's not JMU's fault for any of this. They'll, probably add that as well. If A&M blows out Miami, then Notre Dame fans, oh my God, we would have put up such a better game. We were the better team. We should have been on this stage. Get ready for that. But we're going to see some shade thrown here. We just will. This game is kind of begging for it, and not like the playful shade that we've seen from JMU Sports News, that Twitter account going after Oregon on Twitter. That's been a really fun back and forth. I know The Athletic wrote about it, but the video of like the Oregon touchdown in slow motion and JMU Sports News going, this might be the slowest team we've ever seen. It's just incredible.
And then they posted their highlights in fast motion, and they were like, watch out. They're not catching us.
Not an official JMU account, but that's how it's done. Take advantage of your moment, and they certainly are. And you know what this is going to turn into if Oregon rolls. People will complain. People will complain about their entertainment value, and they're going to blame JMU, when in reality, none of this happens if simply the ACC understands how to do a tiebreaker. If all of that is just taken care of and the ACC actually understands that you're supposed to put your highest ranked teams in the conference championship game and not have any universe in which a 5-loss team can play for and then win your conference title, then none of this happens. And that's not to take shots at 5-loss Duke, friend of the program, Manny Diaz, but this is the ACC's fault. Don't blame poor little JMU, who's got to get on a plane and travel a few thousand miles to probably get the doors beat in against Oregon. They didn't do anything wrong here. All right. They won football games. But I hate that some people are only going to watch this game for those narratives. That's such a lame, lazy thing to do. And then they're going to act like something was stolen from them, or, oh my gosh, what a travesty that this is how we decided to crown a national champ. And, they're going to feel jaded that they have to watch this. And you know what? If you feel really that jaded, just Bears hosting the Packers, Fox, same time. Just saying.
Have you finally accepted that the Bears are good? Because being a Saints fan and dealing with, oh, my poor Bears, when they got like the best team in the NFL, has been frustrating.
I love 10-4. I love 10-4. If they win a playoff game this year, Will, I will be happy as a pig, and you know what?
That sounds awesome.
Haven't won a playoff game in 15 years. We're talking here, so yeah, I would be joyous if that were the case. They have not won a playoff game since I could legally drink alcohol. Good Lord.
This is the year.
Yeah, man, I hope. I do think this is a fascinating matchup. If you can get beyond all of that crap and actually watch the football stuff that could be going on in this one, and even if it is a lopsided matchup on paper, JMU's defense is legit. Okay, they're allowing a 49.5% completion rate. Only 2 teams have bested that in the 2020s. Even Louisville with Jeff Brom could not throw against this team. Dante Moore's biggest area of improvement under Will Stein has been his accuracy, especially under pressure. 73.5% adjusted completion percentage in those spots. Meanwhile, JMU, their quarterback, Alonza, should be Alonzo. Alonza, haven't heard that one. Alonzo Barnett III, he's last among playoff quarterbacks in adjusted completion percentage under pressure. Gunnar Stockton, Georgia fans, he's first in that. Oregon hasn't been great this year at dialing up pressure. Ironic that some of the Dan Lanning issues with this defense have kind of mirrored what Georgia went through in the early part of the season. But in this setting, I think they're going to have that advantage. I still think that they're going to be able to force Barnett into some of those poor decisions. They'll get JMU behind schedule. I think Oregon rolls in this one. I don't think it's particularly close, like a 45-21 game. Everyone is big mad that JMU is able to get into the field, even though the 12 seed could have just easily been Tulane, and this still could have been the result. So if you're getting mad while watching this football game, either watch another football game that's also on at the same time that has some pretty big ramifications, or just assume that we're always going to have lopsided games, because people forget, what did we have with the 14 playoff? Will, we had lopsided games. We've had lopsided national championship games with the 14 playoff. So don't make fun of JMU.
Yeah, we had these little adorable Cinderella stories like Michigan in the 14 playoff that just got rolled by Georgia. No,
I was there. That was lopsided. Very lopsided.
Yeah, I mean, how could they overcome such a thing at Michigan? Legally, I'm sure, with lots of high quality individual Michigan men. Anyway, so that being said, I was talking to one of my coworkers about this, and there's like a couple of schools of thought here, right? Like, you've seen probably like the Bud Elliott stuff where he's like doing the whole bit about like this is a player safety issue to include these like G5 teams.
Like Bud, hate that.
Yeah, it kind of is like hey, we get free football, enjoy it. This is why, like, you're playing right into the capitalist Super League hands, brother. Like, I don't know who's paying people to have these takes against the little guy, but could never be me, right? And try like rooting for one small market team in any sport and just understand what it's like on the other side of that, where everything is kind of against you, and how awesome it is to be in this situation. And I was joking with that coworker about, it's like, hey, you got 2 G5 teams here, right? You have one of them in Tulane who needs to play the best football because they're losing John Summerall, and then you have one in JMU who needs to play the best football because they're gaining Billy Napier, so they may never be here again. So no, I this is like a great like kind of last ride for this JMU team, and a team that's kind of been, I'd say, under the radar, because they at this point have had kind of a run here in D1, and I guess they're turning into a real program at the G5 level. But yeah, I think Oregon, like, the type of performance they had last year in their first game against Ohio State was just strictly talent. And I think this is a game that even an Oregon offense has been kind of beleaguered, even an Oregon defense that, to your point, hasn't really gotten after the quarterback. I think that, it might look sloppy, especially for a couple of quarters. Like we saw Oregon do this, against Iowa and such, where it's just like, how are you still in this game? But I think it's a great matchup for Oregon to kind of get some of those kinks out early and have good film to look back on. Wouldn't anticipate an upset here. But yeah, I think it's a cool matchup. I'm not going to say it could go either way, but I'm glad they got in. It's kind of just unfortunate they got Oregon, who's just been here for a minute.
Oregon, by the way, trying to get their first playoff win since Marcus Mariota. Yeah, that's how he says it, Mariota. Since 2014, last time that Oregon won a playoff game. Crazy.
That's like, I've often joked about like the playoff history thing that people do for graphics, where I'm like, that's like 10 years. This is actually a playoff history thing. That's pretty funny because they've made it a ton, and or at least been right there.
Yeah, they've made it once last year.
Wow, that's a really good point. They were a like 1 seed last year, and so it's easy to forget that for the 14 playoff, they were always right outside. It was a Washington in their way. It was like, oh yeah,
ran into never got there with Justin Herbert. and then ran into those Washington DeBoer teams and couldn't find a way to be able to get in. So yeah, history that they're chasing. And I think Oregon is one of those teams that nobody's going to be talking about, even if they win this game by 100 points. And I think, maybe some injuries could be kind of working against them having national championship upside. So much about whether or not you can make a run in this field is how healthy you are at this time. They've done a really, really good job within games of managing injuries, especially on the offensive side of the ball, where it's just, they've had games where they felt totally decimated, including on the offensive line. One of the reasons that I've liked Will Stein so much is their ability to work through that this year. And so they could be one of those teams that's just not quite healthy enough to win a title. But if you're in the gambling world, it might be an interesting time to put a flyer on this Oregon team who didn't play in a Big Ten championship, could end up being the best version of itself. Maybe this is Dan Lanning's time, and we're just not talking about it, So, and we're not going to be talking about it if they beat GMU.
Right. Yeah. I hate to say that I love this game and that this could be a little bit of a buy for Oregon, but I'll put it to you like this: if James Madison gives this Oregon team trouble, it's going to be a problem. So I think for Oregon, this is a little bit of a dream where it goes, hey, we could win this game convincingly, nobody would care, so we might as well use it as a little bit of a dress rehearsal.
Yeah, like if Dante Moore is all of a sudden just completing 40% of his passes and doing essentially what JMU has done to, they've had 2 teams against them that have gotten to 60% completion rate all season, which is just insane. That's kind of been the benchmark number, is 60% for whether or not you're actually good in that area. But I just think that would be a pretty troubling sign moving forward for Oregon, who, like A&M, has both of its coordinators off to other jobs. We'll see how much. We'll play the results if that ultimately holds Oregon back. And by the way, I was looking down earlier because I was trying to remember all the members of that 2021 Michigan coaching staff. And my God, OC was Josh Gaddis, co-OC Sharon Moore. And by the way, Jim Harbaugh coach team, just in case we forgot that. Quarterbacks coach, Matt Weiss. Defensive coordinator, Mike McDonald, one of the coach of the year candidates in the NFL. And then who else we have? Jay Harbaugh. Yeah, okay, that's still pretty notable. That's a very notable staff that Michigan had. My God.
One thing about Harbaugh is I think that he was just such a football purist that he would just assemble the strangest room of Avengers that he could and be like, you guys are all here for the right reasons, right? And hey, eventually it worked out.
We're several documentaries. I know we're already at least one documentary into the. Oh, we didn't include Connor Stallions because technically he's not an on-field assistant, but he's part of that. Weird to think of all the casting characters that were part of those Michigan teams. Anyway, let's kick it to Dari. Dari's one of my favorite people. Love being able to talk about some Oklahoma storylines with him, talk some college football playoff, talk about an idea that I have for this new era of the transfer portal as well. So here is Dari Nowkhah. For those of you who are not watching Saturday Down South podcast on YouTube and just are audio only, now would be a good time to go on YouTube and subscribe to Saturday Down South, because we have all of our episodes are uploaded in full. If you like watching our individual game breakdowns, you're like, hey, you know what? 2-hour pod, that's really not for me. I really just kind of want to hear about my own team. That's fine. Saturday Down South on YouTube. We're going to have all of those matchup breakdowns. We do every single power conference game. We preview, we recap. That involve the SEC. So we have so much content right now on Saturday Down South on YouTube. We have YouTube exclusive videos, and sometimes we'll do interviews that are just on Saturday Down South on YouTube. So definitely go subscribe. Please do that right now. Now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is the one and only Dari Nowkhah. Dari, a lot to get to with you. We're going to talk, obviously, Oklahoma. We're going to talk college football playoff. We'll talk a little portal, but got to ask. You voted for Diego Pavia to win the Heisman Trophy. I did not. I voted Fernando Mendoza. Play the homer tag with me, whatever. I don't care. Your reaction to his reaction as someone who voted for Pavia was what?
Yeah, disappointed. Disappointed. I thought it was, I was, I voted for him because I think he's the best player in the country. But I also understand that there's a side of him, though he's never at Vanderbilt been in legal trouble. though he's beloved by his coaches and teammates, beloved by the community there. But I also realize there's a brashness to him. And I also understand maybe there are people that are like, I don't want to see his mom anymore. I'm tired of his brothers. He's different, no question about it. I was disappointed in the reaction. It was classless. I wish I could say it shocked me, but it's him. It's like this competitor. It's where he's from. But being where he's from, Connor, is also part of the greatness of his story. I mean, he's from a tough part of Albuquerque and battled it up through junior college, and then obviously a Group of 5 school, beat up an SEC team, gets the opportunity to come play in the SEC team, battles for that extra year, and in that once that extra year is granted, not once did he give any perception that he was looking to go to the highest bidder, which he could have done and gone anywhere but Vanderbilt. He's continued to build this program up. I think, again, he's the most exciting player in college football. I think he's the best player in college football with everything he's able to do. But disappointed in the reaction. But I voted for him because I think he is, by definition, the most outstanding player in college football.
If you had known the reaction was going to be what it was with him, would it have changed your process at all?
That's hard to go back and think about. No, I still think he's the best player in college football.
That's fair.
Yeah, I voted for Jameis Winston. I voted for Cam Newton. I voted, they all had some stuff, right? They all had some stuff, but I think he's the most outstanding player in college football. He hasn't been arrested. He hasn't. Baker Mayfield won a Heisman Trophy. He got arrested in Fayetteville. Like, this isn't the only time when a guy has made some mistakes. I would rather him have been classier in congratulating Fernando, and obviously Fernando's a very deserving winner. I have no issue with it, but yeah, I was disappointed in that. But I think all in all, I would have voted for Diego again because I do believe he is that definition.
Speaking of reactions, what was your reaction initially to seeing the Bama draw, and now having, what are we, a week and a half removed from Selection Sunday to be able to process that draw for Oklahoma?
Yeah, I thought Bama was going to make it the whole time. And at the same time, I don't think they look like a playoff team. But I do know that committee is really, really, I think, cognizant of having a team in the playoff going into the championship weekend and not losing its spot in the playoff if they lose in championship weekend. I know they moved SMU down last year. They kept them in the field. I know they moved BYU down, but BYU wasn't in the field going in. So I think it's a different deal. I expected Bama, though, maybe to drop to 10. So I expected Oklahoma to get either Miami or Notre Dame, whoever, survived that. I love the draw. I think the Bama draw for Oklahoma is the best possible draw for Oklahoma. It's a team that they have beaten twice in the last calendar year or 13 months. It's a team that they forced into a lot of mistakes. It's the team of the three that is playing the worst right now, the most inconsistent football. So while it would have been cool to see Miami or Notre Dame go into Norman for a playoff game, I think this is probably Oklahoma's best shot for a win. Certainly not guaranteeing one, but I think it's the team that they should beat.
What's Oklahoma's path to victory? Because that's a weird question to ask about a game that we saw decided in Tuscaloosa a month ago. But at the same time, I would also say, well, Oklahoma won the turnover battle 3-0. Bama had twice as many yards. Bama got smoked in the kicking game as well. Can't forget about that. And I don't know how repeatable that is necessarily to say that's our plan. Like, I don't think Brent Venables is sitting there and, drawing up game plans going, let's just repeat that model that worked. Obviously, they'd love to be able to replicate some of those similar things that played out in that game. But what is your most clear path to victory for the Sooners to be able to move on to the quarterfinals?
It's, Connor, you're right. Like, you can't sit and count on 3 turnovers, one of them returned for a touchdown, right? You can't say, if we get that, we're going to win this game. But they have had 3 weeks for Brent Venables to look at what worked the first time, take a little piece perhaps. Now, I think Auburn and Georgia took a lot of pieces from Oklahoma's game plan in playing Alabama after OU did, but also look at what Auburn was able to do. Look at what Georgia was able to do. I've been told you might see a game plan that features 60% of what things that he ran the first time, but 30 to 40% new material. And he was really able to get through a somewhat of a weak offensive line to create pressure from every single angle to make Ty uncomfortable. Yes, he threw the pick. He also lost a fumble. He also took some sacks. He didn't look like himself. And frankly, I don't think he's looked like himself since. So to answer your question, what's the game plan? The game plan is, I think it's the same thing. I think it is get them in 3rd and long. You're going to win the field of position battle all night. You've got the best kicker in America, who I think if he was in the NFL with these numbers is probably an all-pro right now. And I think that You've got a punter that is probably one of the 5 best in America that can pin teams deep and also has an average of 46 to 48 yards a punt. Don't let the offense kill you. Although Mateer's healthier than he's been, Xavier Robinson's healthier than he's been, Torrey Blaylock is healthier than he's been. Jake Michael of the center might be back to move Wee Woo back to guard, to move Ryan Foje back to tackle. If not, the way it lined up against LSU, they played well, and that would be the worst case scenario. But I think it is play defense. Don't let the offense kill you. I think they'll be able to run the football a little bit better, just honestly with health and 3 weeks of repetition. Mateer does not have the cast on his hand anymore. It is off. So perhaps that means a little bit more accurate for John Mateer, more comfortable stepping up and throwing the football. I think the offensive line has been a pretty good group in terms of pass pro. So I think it's get a few plays when you can on offense, which they typically have done, even though it hasn't always been pretty. But it's win with defense. It's force third and longs. It's make time, make mistakes. It's win the field of position battle and hammer home 3 at a time if you can do that with Tate Sandell. I don't expect a lot of points, but I think that's a formula for them to win.
I'm fascinated to see what John Mateer looks like without the cast. And, if you recall, he really only had 1 bye week this year because he's rehabbing, he's getting surgery and stuff before Texas. Like, I don't really count that, but his bye week was before Bama, and he still at least had the 20-yard touchdown run in that game. And not to say that he looked particularly great, but I do think that's the one thing that if you're looking at this game and going, oh boy, I've been looking at Oklahoma all wrong, it's John Mateer coming out and looking like the guy that we saw against Michigan. If he comes out and looks like that in this game in the first quarter, I think everybody in college football is having different conversations about Oklahoma.
I agree. They're not going to get outgained by 200 yards if that happens again. By the way, I don't expect Ty to throw for 300 yards again, but if he does look, I think one of the most encouraging things about Mateer even before this break was if you go back and start with that Tennessee game and then 2 weeks later, Alabama, Missouri, LSU, the way he's run the football, all of his confidence is back in that angle. Like when you saw him run against Texas, saw him run against Ole Miss, he was so hesitant, so slow to hit those holes because I think he was really worried about getting hit in that hand. And now I think starting with Knoxville, he's been a different runner, but has his accuracy been off as a thrower? And I think it probably has to some degree. Now, again, more natural feel, no brace on that hand. I think we could get closer to the Michigan Mateer. I don't know that we're going to get the Michigan Mateer, but it also is not just hand, and it's not just accuracy. He's had some issues with decision making, throwing into traffic, bypassing clear open targets that a route was designed to go to try to make the home run ball because he feels like he has to do that. That cannot happen. And that's something that you hope in 3 weeks of Ben Arbuckle and Brent Venables preaching to him. You take the throws that are there, and Oklahoma can win this football game because of a dominant 2 other aspects to their football team.
Is Brent Venables a little bit too involved in the offense? Do you think there's a little bit? Do you think there's any of that? Because I think Oklahoma fans can watch the way that this has played out with how conservative they've been at points.
Yeah.
And, you see the comments. He's saying to Ben Arbuckle, like, hey, they're not getting another first down in this game. Let's be smart about this. Is there any element watching this team that makes you think that's the case, or just not at all?
No, I mean, I certainly believe that Brent has final say. Not on every play, but situationally when it calls for that. I think he should. It's ultimately his job on the line, right? And I think that he should have some say on that. We have a conversation all the time on our show that, why are they conservative? Is it play? Is it because you don't want to mess? You want to let your defense and special teams win, so you don't want to make a mistake and put them in a bad spot and defend a short field, or is it because you don't have the playmakers on the outside and the quarterback that you trust to run it? I think it's a blend of both, and I think BV is involved in that. Like, let us win the football game. Make some plays when you can, dial up what you think's going to work, but don't put our defense in a bad spot. I think that's about the extent of his involvement in the offense. And frankly, when we see some of the inaccuracies, some of the decision-making of Mateer and the difficulty running the football, I think that's what it's called for. He talks about doing what it takes to win, and it doesn't look the same from week to week or year to year. But I think that style of play, honestly, while we'd all like to see a more explosive offense, is kind of just what it takes to win. They've done it, and they've gone 10-2 doing it, 10-2 doing it.
It's tricky because he's got what? I think he's got like 10 turnover-worthy plays on passes between 10 and 19 yards, the intermediate range where you just can't have those mistakes. And you're
No,
right.
man.
Like in a 60-minute window, you're just get us into the playoff. We need to be able to win these games, survive advance.
Right.
We're not worried about style points. And now, though, it's interesting because you can't obviously play offense this way for 4 consecutive games and expect to win. At the same time, you are just focused on those 60 minutes. And what does it take to be able to win these one at a time? So I think it's going to be a tricky thing to manage. Like there's a reason why Oklahoma's got the worst odds to win the national championship among the power conference teams in this field.
Yeah.
And it's because of that, but it's going to be a tricky thing to figure out. Something I've been wanting to ask you about for the last couple of months since we had you on right before the start of the season, Jaydn Ott, what in the world do we make of this situation and why? Because you talk about the backs being healthy for Oklahoma, but this is a ground game that needs to be jump-started. What in the world has gone on with him that's led us to this point where he's considered a non-factor going into this?
It's a great mystery. They don't talk about him. There were some weeks in the middle of the season where BB would suggest that he's available, but he got banged up in the fall, but they had him out there early in the season on special teams. You'd get him out there for a few carries here and there, maybe to pass protect, which he was god awful horrific at. He is the most polarizing figure in this team right now. I had to make a deal on my show that I'm going to try to quit talking about him because it pisses me off. I'll be honest with you. As he celebrated his 23rd birthday yesterday, I am incredibly disappointed because I don't think it's a health thing. They put him on the field. If it was a health thing, they wouldn't put him on the field
either. Yeah,
right. We see him. We've seen the few carries he's got. He's slow. He's tentative, and he avoids contact. A few games he's been in pass protection. He's done anything but actually want to make contact with the individual. It's a lack of effort. It's a lack of investment. Brent Venables at one point midway through the season did say, I just wish he was a little farther along in every way. And I take that to mean work ethic, effort, desire, all of it. He's not kicked off the team. You'll see him standing on the sideline. He was on the field when Oklahoma scored one of the touchdowns against Missouri. He didn't have anything to do with the play. But it's the overall feel, my feel, and I think from what I can gauge from Sooner fans, is the overall feel is he robbed OU blind. He got roughly $800,000. That's the number that's floating around. And he's not playing. And he's not playing hard. And he's not showing heart. And there's no work ethic. And that's the overall feel. And Oklahoma has never come out and said, guys, he's banged up. He's dealing with a lot here. We're trying to get him some help. They've never come to his aid. They've never defended him against any of the critics. The belief is simply he came, he's getting his money, and he's the first boo-boo of Jim Nagy's transfer portal edition era. Hopefully he's the only one because Jim's done a really good job everywhere else. But that has gone awry, and he is not a favorite in Norman or anywhere in Sooner Nation.
It's so bizarre because he's even past, you could say, like sometimes in this day and age, you look at, all right, so the guy hasn't played, how many games has he played in this year? He's past that. He's at the 5 game.
No, he's
threshold.
not right. Yeah.
He's out of options.
Honestly, I'm glad he is, because if this is what it feels like and seems like, and I always say this too, if there is something genuinely wrong with Jaydn Ott, or he's going through some stuff that he just can't focus on football, then I apologize for everything that I've said that's critical of him. But all I have to go on is I do hear a little bit of it. It certainly feels this way. It's not health, or they wouldn't put him on the field. He's just not invested. He doesn't care. And frankly, again, he got $800,000-ish. And you're going to have these kind of individuals. Hopefully they're few and far between, where they get their money, they say, gotcha. And that's it. But, it's frustrating. He shouldn't touch the field. I don't think he should have touched the field for the last probably 3 or 4 times, but I'm glad that he doesn't have another year. I'm glad that this counts as a year, because they certainly paid him his money. It counts as your year. I think something interesting, though, that people are watching for, Connor, is another running back, Javonte Barnes. Javonte Barnes, number 2, is really good in pass protection. He's an adequate runner, but he adds depth behind Robinson and Blaylock, or whatever order you put those two in. He did make the decision, and Brent Venables explained it a few weeks back, that he would like to redshirt, and he was at 4 games. Postseason games don't count, so he could still play in the playoff and still redshirt, and he is now probable on the availability report, which certainly gives the indication that he's going to be a part of this team in that game. You know, you can question, what do the teammates that have worked all year think about it? What would Robinson and Blaylock think if he shows up on the field and he's taking carries from them, which I don't think he would. I think he might play 10 to 12 snaps. But Brent Venables explained, like, you know, you kind of got to take all of these requests from these players that want a red shirt midway through the season, and you look at them individually. And if they've done the right things, if they've worked hard still in practice, if they're great teammates, if they're teaching their teammates things that might help them in games, and they're engaged in everything we're doing, you know, and he's taking care of his grades, and all of these things are good, and he's a high character guy, we're going to look at him and we're going to give him that benefit of that doubt. And that's what they've done with Javonte. And I think his players all certainly would be, for the most part, would be happy to see him play.
It's like Ashton Daniels at Auburn. You know, they did right by him by giving him the red shirt, making sure that he's not playing in that Mercer game. It's like, all right, let's see what Deuce Knight has. It makes sense. Yeah, and it's difficult, I bet, for Oklahoma to look at all the different great transfer running backs in the SEC, and Ahmad Hardy, Kejuan Lacey, these guys that run through contact as well. And you could say, hey, they could probably withstand a bad offensive line and still be great players. So it's really frustrating from that standpoint all around. Okay, as a topic that I'm sure OU fans wish to talk about a little bit more. Has Oklahoma already won the Lincoln Riley breakup?
Oh, 100%. Yes. Yeah. No, it's, first team to get to the playoff, you know, between the two since Riley's departure. There's an incredible feeling of optimism around the Oklahoma program that hasn't been felt probably since Lincoln's teams, honestly. Everybody's satisfied. Actually not satisfied, frankly, loves Brent Venables for who he is on the field and off. I think Brent Venables has learned, even has taken massive strides as a coach this year, from one, deciding to take on the defensive play calling, but also leaving the majority of the scouting to Jim Nagy and his group, to frankly, game management. Early in the season, there were multiple times that it was poor. He hasn't really had a game management issue of late. He's beloved in the state. People feel that he is loyal to the program. He's a great leader. He'll get out and in the community. He's great on coaches shows. He's very friendly with everybody around him. He doesn't seem like he's kind of just hiding in his office all the time. Yes, I think Oklahoma has frankly kicked USC's ass on the Lincoln Riley situation.
As Oklahoma fans would know, that was a little softball for you. A little softball. OU fans know softball well.
Wasn't always that way. It didn't feel that way all the time, though.
Fair.
But OU fans do like to go back to like 2019 or 21 or whatever and find all the crap that SC fans are talking, and, you know, OU fans talking, USC fans talking. SC had a good couple of years that OU didn't have, you know, but right now, I think it's an OUW.
Let's take Fernando Mendoza off the table. Which playoff quarterback would you want most to navigate this field?
Ooh, I like that one. So you're leaving me guys like Sayin, Reed,
Stockton,
Chambliss, Stockton, Moore. I think I like Trinidad Chambliss. I think that might be the guy I take. Now, obviously, the coaching situation is different, but he still has his play caller. He still has most of his offensive staff. Still got a lot of talent around him. And Connor, I'm going to be in Oxford starting Thursday night, and we'll be covering the game Saturday. I can't wait to get a feel of that community and that team. This anti-Lane pull, you know, it's us against the world type of mentality. I think Ole Miss is incredibly dangerous because of this. I realize that they don't have good odds either to win this thing. I think they're a lot more dangerous right now than people want to give them credit for.
I think that's a fair answer. I would debate between Chambliss and Gunnar Stockton. And just
he was
Stockton.
mine too. Yeah.
Having that experience at this level, I think it just kind of matters. And Stockton being able to show as much as he had as in these clutch situations, I don't think you can go wrong with either guy. Speaking of quarterbacks, which portal quarterback would you want right now? Because the market's filling up, you know, with DJ Lagway, we're seeing Sam Levitt enter the portal, like, you know, Philo from Georgia Tech. Everybody's already penciled him in for Florida. Maybe by the time people are listening to this, he's already going to have an announcement. But, you know, which one of these guys have you seen as someone that had to look very hard at that market last year, with, you know, knowing Oklahoma was going to make that type of move? Which one of these guys would you want? And you can't say TJ Finley.
Well, the one I would not say TJ Finley. 7 years, 7 teams. No, I would not say TJ Finley. Well, okay, for who? Like, for what school are you talking about?
That's a good
I think it
question.
matters. Like Oklahoma's not going to be in that market because they're, I think, paying a lot for Mateer, and the expectation is he's back. But if it was a team like Oklahoma, I would want Sam Levitt all day.
Yeah.
I think Sam Levitt is the guy that operates that sort of an offense. If I'm Ole Miss and Chambliss ends up getting that year and goes to LSU to play with Lane, I look right at Sam Levitt. I say, you're the guy that can run what we think we want to run. Now, I know it's going to look a little bit different, but it has worked with the personnel that Ole Miss has. Lagway, the step back that he took certainly concerns me, though with the right coaching, he could be really, really dangerous. Raiola, I'm not huge on him. So I would probably say Levitt at this point.
I would agree with that. The wrong answer was going to be doing Raiola. The wrong answer was going to be.
Oh, yeah, no. Yeah.
Yeah, we weren't going to go there.
Yeah.
No.
It sounds like, are you hearing Texas Tech for Sorsby? That's kind of,
I think his girlfriend's already on her way there. And I can't remember if is she a basketball player or something like that.
She's a softball player. But yeah. Girlfriends are undefeated in that sense, so he'll end up a Red Raider. Yeah.
I'm interested to see too. I think Kentucky and Vandy have a lot to offer in the portal market. With and I understand like Cutter Boley is locked in to stay at Kentucky, so I'm not saying that necessarily that they will go that route. But if you're Will Stein, like everybody's saying, oh, I want to go to Oregon, buddy. Will Stein's at Kentucky now.
Will Stein's the reason offensively a lot of people wanted to go to Oregon. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and Vandy too. Just getting to play with Tim Beck would be awesome. Assuming that Diego Pavi eventually moves on. Last one for you. We need to get the TV execs on board with this. So this is why you're the perfect person to discuss this with. But can we get a national portal day? Everybody's talking about how I miss National Signing Day. I miss not being able to have that day to look forward to in February. A national portal day where it's just the first day. It could be January 2nd. It could be January 2nd, the first day that the portal opens up. And it's just a portal special. And we get all these announcements. It's kind of like what the NBA has with free agency. Tell me that wouldn't do huge numbers, and that would be a big deal on SEC Network.
It would be a huge number anywhere. Yes. I love the idea. Now, what are the reasons we couldn't do it? Let's think about that, because that would be the first thing those executives would think about. What are the reasons we couldn't do it?
Announcements are going to be coming in beforehand, probably. I know a lot of these.
Right. And coaches need to know, right? Yeah. Coaches need to know ahead of time, because if they feel so-and-so is going somewhere else, then on January 2, they're not going to have the opportunity to go look for receiver number 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, If they think they got a left tackle and the left tackle says, I'm going to a different place, now you're in a lot of trouble. So I think television would love it. I don't know that the coaches would love it.
But it moves up everything. It could move up everything on the calendar. It could essentially, legalize tampering, which is already going on, and nobody's regulating that anyways.
No, it's not going on.
Look, I'm sure that Oklahoma did not tamper to get John Mateer at all. They just got Ben Arbuckle and had these independent conversations. Whatever. No, he wasn't going to hit the portal at all. But it would be fascinating to see something like that. See the calendar maybe moved up a little bit, even more so, to kind of accommodate for that, and just to have these specials. And you get somebody that joins a new program like that comes into the SEC, and then you get them on campus or something like that. And you get to interview them instead of like in a crowded gym with family members over their shoulders or something. I just think it would really play, and I would think it would speak to what this system and what this calendar is becoming. Give the people something back to look forward to.
As long as I don't have another Landon Collins and his mom situation, then I wouldn't mind it at all. It'd be a lot of fun.
I love watching that clip, knowing that you're there for that. That just have you that's the craziest signing day live situation you've ever been a part of, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I did the Under Armour signings, I think, for 3 years, and that one stands out far and above the rest. That was the weirdest, and it was weird before it. The whole thing was weird. Mom's arguing with girlfriend as I'm trying to get them over to the set during the break, and girlfriend wants to sit on a couch, and mom is like, you ain't in this family. You're not sitting on this couch. Girlfriend goes behind the couch. Mom's on the couch. He says, I'm yelling at this whole family, 10 seconds. Guys, stop. 10 seconds, guys. Okay. Calms down. Landon chooses Alabama. Mom starts shaking her head. I can see her. She's right there next to him. I'm looking right at her. And now I'm asking Landon a throwaway question, basically, so that I can think to myself, what's the right way to phrase the question to mom? Producer's in my ear saying, it didn't look like mom liked that answer. You may want to ask a follow-up. And I'm thinking to myself, I saw that. Thank you. I'm working on it. And then the rest is history. Until 2 years later, that same woman, April Justice, came back for her son, Oh my God. Gerald Willis. Gerald Willis. So half brother of Landon, Gerald Willis, also choosing between LSU and Florida, announces Florida. So there you go. Both kids say, I don't think I want to stay around here. I'm going to go somewhere else.
It's so funny because that was the ultimate chaotic situation, and you are probably the best person on planet Earth to make sure that the situation doesn't get chaotic. And it still happened the way that it did. And a lesser host would have turned that situation into probably an even wilder spectacle. And you kind of brought some calmness to it.
But how fun would it have been if it was Springer-ish? Think about it. Might have been fun.
That's true.
Mom and girlfriend.
Did you hold the situation back from reaching its true peak levels of chaos? Maybe.
If I was a host on a show like Springer, we would have made that happen. But I know ESPN didn't want that. Senior Bowl, the Under Armour didn't want that. So we did the best we could. It still made its rounds.
That's fair. That's fair. Dari, I know you got to go. You got to go host your show. KREF. Everybody should go listen. KREF app, SEC Network. There's a good chance that if you just turn on SEC Network at a given point in the day, you're going to be on it.
So, I'll be there tonight. Yeah, I'll be there tonight.
Exactly. Yeah. Dari, appreciate it, man.
You got it. Always good to talk to you, man.
Before we get to the rest of the podcast, I want to talk to you guys about Kalshi. This is something that is blowing up right now. Maybe you've seen people reference Kalshi in relation to a lot of different things that are going on in the world. And basically, this is a place where you can make money off of predictions. What do we do on these preview pods? We predict things. We tell you, hey, this is how you would bet here. This is how you would bet there. This isn't betting. This is sports trading. This is the ability to make predictions and say, hey, I can make money off of that. If you go to Kalshi right now, you can see that they have markets for a variety of different things. You can predict who's going to be the next head coach at UNC or Penn State or these different things that there are markets for. And the cool thing about this, all 50 states you can do this in. They are legal at the federal level. It's not a state-by-state deal. And so Kalshi has just a wide variety of things that you can make picks on, make predictions on, and win money. It's a really, really cool source to be able to kind of flex some of those prediction muscles. I know all of you listening to this, you guys can see into the crystal ball. So use the promo code SDS, get signed up today, and make yourself some money on Kalshi. All right, well, let's send the people on their way with some Lad of the Week. You want to start us off?
Yeah, I will. I will start us off. So, Connor, do you know what Jarvis Jones is up to these days?
I do not.
Man, so I'm obviously in Atlanta on our local, I believe Fox affiliate. I was flipping around last night, and we got a high school football championship, and I got to see Jarvis Jones in all of his glory as a head coach for a 14-0 high school football team. So let me just show you this fit our guy Jarvis Jones was rocking.
Okay, for the audio only audience. Oh, he's got camo overalls.
Oh yeah, dude. Their colors, man, black, maroon, baby blue. My guy is rocking an all black hoodie with camo overalls. Look at his coaching staff, bro. They look like they just come out of the duck blinds. There had to be, I don't know, 8-10 of these guys on the sidelines all wearing these fly overalls. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, yo, that guy looks famous. That doesn't look like a regular person. That guy looks like a linebacker. That's Jarvis Jones.
Darn good one.
Yes. And so I look, man, he is the head coach at his old high school football team, which was GW Carver in Columbus. Now they've been merged. Basically, it's Carver, something. But yeah, this is his first year as a head coach, and he was 14-0 going into that game, and won that game. And it's so cool to see just a dude. It makes you feel a little bit old, right? But seeing a dude that we all watched, loved as a player, just kind of seamlessly transition into this next thing. Still looks like an NFL player, still kind of shredded, got the clean cut, in my opinion, that's the sickest sideline fit I've ever seen.
It would go a little bit harder if that game's being played outside instead of at the Dome at Mercedes-Benz. That fit is meant for outside.
Look, you can't control the conditions. You just got to control your swag, all right? And he did that. He controlled what he could control. But good for Jarvis Jones, man. It was super cool. They had thing, like a little pod or a story on the opposing head coach, said that he like invited him to a camp when he was a player, and it's got to be so wild to look across sidelines and be like, oh, that guy. So good for him, man. Just an absolute lad, kind of giving back to the community that raised him, bringing home a championship, undefeated season. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know the rich history of that football team, but it's awesome for him to be able to do that and look just incredibly fly while bringing home the hardware.
He doesn't get talked about in those what ifs because we got to see him be awesome at Georgia, but he's one of those guys that if he didn't have it was like a spinal condition or something like that, and he couldn't get cleared to play at USC where he originally started his career, and then he transfers to Georgia, and like he was able to play at Georgia, but it was a thing going in the NFL, and he just was never able to become like, you know, the guy that we saw at Georgia because of that. But he is a what if that we should probably discuss more, you know, among these all-time college football greats who could have had, you know, unbelievable NFL careers had they had a clean bill of health. I'm convinced that he could have been a Hall of Fame level linebacker if he had been able to be healthy and not have to deal with that.
Yeah, and honestly, we hear a ton of stories about guys like that have like an unfortunate situation and they just end up kind of doing whatever, you know, just like, ah, well. But it's cool to see him like still juiced up, still on the sidelines, you know, using that gift to like kind of make kids' lives better. And I will say on the Chiron, it was Carver - Columbus. That's because they're different Carvers in Georgia. So it's just GW Carver. I didn't want to merge them into a different school. But yeah, I think that's super cool. Like I said, just to see a big smile on his face, chilling, giving back to the community. It's just great to see dudes doing the right thing. I don't know.
Love it. Love it. Coaching high school football. Nothing as pure as that, right? Speaking of guys who coach high school football, well, Philip Rivers. Philip Rivers, 44 years young, nearly won an NFL playoff game. Not an NFL playoff game, but it felt like a playoff game for the Colts. Nearly won an NFL game on the road against one of the two best defenses in the NFL. And I know it was basically one touchdown pass and a bunch of dink and dunk, and he couldn't stretch the field. He's 44. He had played in the NFL in 5 years.
Talk about a player safety issue, brother.
My God. And I think it was so easy to poke fun at this all week and go, man, the Colts are basically doing like the Jeff Saturday thing all over again. How is this actually real? How do they not have a better option? Anthony Richardson broke a bone in his face during warmups. Riley Leonard isn't healthy, and you know they just didn't necessarily have those options. Daniel Jones with the Achilles and all that. So to be able to step off of a high school field wherein you're coaching and you might sling the ball around in practice, and he's coaching up one of his 10 kids, probably multiple of those 10 kids. That's the other part of this that just cannot be overstated. Having kids ages you. Okay. I have one. It has aged me. I have no idea how one can have 10 kids and it doesn't age him. I mean, I'm sure it has to a certain degree, but this is someone who's getting ready to find out if he was going to make it into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And now he has reset that clock. He reset his health insurance clock. I saw Front Office Sports tweeted that, like, oh, he got another 5 years of NFL benefits. The guy made $250 million in his NFL career. I'm pretty sure health insurance is good. He's got that covered for his kids. He's fine. But okay.
I don't know, man. You know how much daycare is? That was probably a pretty heavy factor where they were like, hey, you come back, we'll take care of your kids, dude.
True. Daycare is a fortune these days, man. Even if you got $250 million, good luck. But man, I like anybody that criticize. This is one of those things. If you criticize this at all, shame on you. I saw Ben Solak getting up there at SportsCenter and he's talking about like, yeah, it wasn't that good, blah, blah, blah. Ben Solak, when you turn 44 in 30 years, let me know how this impresses you, okay? Because what that guy did on that field, just to be able to stand there and get play calls in and get out there on time and not get his doors beat in, is the stuff of legend. I truly think that we need to make a movie about Philip Rivers. How is that not in process? The guy, just the 10 kids element alone. I talk about that with Hester all the time. And Hester's like, oh yeah, I've got 5 kids, but I'm only halfway to Phil. And he loves Philip Rivers so much. And so many of the guys that play with him just absolutely love that guy. I want a movie on Philip Rivers' life. And I don't care if it's a PG movie and it's a little bit cheesy and it's kind of like the Kurt Warner movie, whatever. I don't care. That man has 10 kids, coming from someone who whose grandpa had 12 kids. I would love a movie about my grandpa's life, and he did not play in the NFL. He certainly did not play in the NFL when he was 44 years old. Tip of the cap, man. No, nothing but respect, Phil Rivers.
This is just all-time week for lads. Just to draw a distinction, 8 years older than Jarvis Jones, a guy that is almost a decade older, a guy that is associated with NC State because he played there, but is Alabama through and through. He's from like Athens, Alabama, like kind of just a good old boy from Alabama. Like you talked about some of the kids. He was famous for that 3/4 delivery, obviously for his whole career. And seeing that on that body type, like you kind of had to go back in time and remember what it looked like when it was good, because you almost want to compare it to like other quarterbacks and be like, is this guy okay? But no, that's kind of just what his throwing motion has looked like. Yeah, I mean, this just goes to show how we can set the narrative of like our own story. Because yeah, I mean, if he takes a bad sack or whatever, or like has a horrible game, it's like, oh, how could you do this? But like one thing about this Colts team, man, is it's like they keep taking these risks that seem like they make no sense, and they just all end up working out. And it's like the best case or the best story of the winners write history, right? Where it's like this is now an awesome, inspiring story. And good for him. Like I genuinely think that's awesome. I'm gonna make one joke about it though. A la Sean Payton, do we get Kevin James to play him in the movie when he comes back?
God no. Literally anybody else. As someone who's a big Kevin James fan for a really long time, that couldn't have been the top of the list for casting. Okay. I don't know who needs to play that role. Maybe John Hamm could play that role. John Hamm could play Phillip Rivers. Someone that's pretty believable with the dadgummits. That's an essential part. That I'm not going to say that's the only thing that matters with casting for the Phil Rivers biopic, but if you don't deliver a strong dadgummit, I think we can move past Glenn Powell. I think we've kind of had enough of Glenn Powell right now and the football stuff. Not to say that it's all Chad Powers all the time, but could McConaughey do it? I think McConaughey.
I think he's too skinny. I'll be honest, like I think you got to really have a little.
Well, he's shown though.
Get him to put on a little bit of weight. Like
he took off all that weight for Dallas Buyers Club. He could put that weight back. Christian Bale's the real guy that could do the weight fluctuation. That could probably play this role.
I think. Yeah. How about Chris Pratt?
Oh no, that's good.
Chris Pratt would cook in this role because the beauty of Phillip Rivers is he's not a try-hard guy. Like I bet he was doing a little bit of cardio, but this just goes to show that NFL quarterback is pretty close to an office job because the ability to just operate an offense and know where things go is so valuable that they were like, I think he could do this, and he could. Like that's the thing, just knowing how to get a snap off, what the count is, all that different stuff, like just goes to show that he's just naturally a great quarterback.
Need a little accent in there. It's got to come somewhat natural. I hate it when we have fake horrible accents in some of these shows and productions and stuff like that. Yeah, but make that movie. Hollywood, get on it. 10 kids, quarterback at 44, coaching high school. Come on, the script writes itself. But yeah, Phil Rivers, very, very much worthy of this. And then my other one, much, much younger than one Phil Rivers, Lorenzo Abraham Diaz, son of listener Andrew Diaz, who's been listening for a long time to us, for a long time. His son, literally with the initials Lad, Lorenzo Abraham Diaz, just turned 1. Happy birthday, Lorenzo. Andrew sent some pictures of him as well. And he's well on his way to becoming a lad. And there is just something to be said for manifesting with initials. And I know that from our own experience, manifesting CEO with Claire, giving her the initial CEO has turned into, wow, we really did set the wheels in motion for that. I'm not saying it's definitive that she's going to become a CEO, although if you take away her initials, like mine, her initials are also just CO, company. So that's an easy sell. But Lorenzo Abraham Diaz is going to be a lad. Guaranteed lad. He already embraces all things lad based on these very limited pictures and what we've heard about him during his young life. Happy birthday to Lorenzo.
Happy birthday. I believe they said he goes by Enzo sometimes as well, which is just, This is an all pro name. I mean, you got so much you can do with it. A strong, got the Abraham in there, Enzo a la Ferrari. I think great job with the name there. I'm really, I'll probably have kids later in life, and I'm taking notes on all y'all fathers that are really like really cooking on these names because that's a great one.
Enzo is our neighbor's dog's name, and Enzo gets a groomer that comes like one of those like mobile groomers and stuff like that. And so we'll always see like Enzo getting groomed, and we'll say, Enzo, grooming time. I always wondered, where did the name Enzo come from? Had never put two and two together. Lorenzo, the end of Lorenzo. That makes a lot of sense. Hope that first birthday is going well. First birthday parties can be a little bit tricky. You can overdo it in a big way. I don't want to say that we overdid it with Claire, but we had like, the family come down to my side of the family, drive down from Chicago to Indianapolis. My brother come up from Lexington. We had friends come in from all over. And even though Claire doesn't remember any of it, still the memories last forever and whatnot. But hope Lorenzo has a large cake to be able to put his face into. That's really what all of this comes down to. Just get a cake that he can enjoy.
That sounds dope. I wish I could do that on my birthday. I might bring that back. I think that sounds, I get it now. Like the child birthday party is just like, hey, you remember the feeling probably. Like it makes an impact on you when you're that young, where it's like everybody around here loves me and here's a cake I'm gonna put my face into. So yeah, happy birthday, lad.
Yeah, lad. 1D, not 2Ds like the other lad. 1D, important. All right, that's a pod. Please leave us a 5-star review. Subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch every episode of Saturday Down South podcast. Follow us on Twitter at the STS Pod, at South Down South, at CJ Rivera, at Ghost Thanks, guys. Talk soon.